Are your glycol systems protected and operating at their best? Thermal Fluid Technologies is here to ensure they are. Trusted by industry professionals for over 25 years, their protocol heat transfer fluids provide unmatched corrosion protection and system performance for industrial HVAC, process heating and cooling, and food and beverage applications. Need a clean start? Their cleaner and degreaser prepare your system for years of trouble-free service. And their state-of-the-art lab offers one of the most comprehensive coolant testing programs available. Upgrade your system's performance today with Thermal Fluid Technologies. To learn more about Thermal Fluid Technologies, go to scalinguph2o.com/TFT. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/TFT. Thermal Fluid Technologies, where performance meets peace of mind. Attention water treatment business owners. Mark your calendar for November 11th, the day before the AWT annual convention for the AWT Business Owners Meeting, designed just for company leaders like you. Connect with peers, gain actionable strategies, and get ahead of industry trends. Don't miss this opportunity to focus on your business growth and network with the best in the industry. Secure your spot today and start your convention experience one step ahead. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, your host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, last week I was so excited, I just couldn't let go of Industrial Water Week. And since that episode, I've had several people ask me, hey, you never did a victory lap around Legionella Awareness Month. And I always feel funny saying celebrating Legionella Awareness Month. But I have to say that those people that reached out to me were right. And I want to thank everybody that made Legionella Awareness Month possible. Of course, we have Matt Farigi, Dr. David Krause, we had Patsy Root, Dr. Vincenzo Romano, and lots of people are still talking about his episode where maybe we should just be looking at testing Legionella pneumophila. And then we had so much fun. We had so many great guests. We actually extended it a week out. So we had August extend in the first week of September with our friend from across the pond, and that was Gemma Tennant. So thank you for so many of wonderful guests that we had during the month of August and our Created Extra Week month of August. So Nation, this was without a doubt the most listened to Legionella Awareness Month that we have ever had. In fact, we track what the sharing is. So how many people listen to an episode and then they share that link with somebody and somebody else then starts listening to it, and it is off the charts. So that tells me that there is still so much information that we want to know. And let's face it, we want to verify not only around Legionella, but other waterborne pathogens. So it's my hope that you learned something new during the month of August this year about Legionella, about waterborne pathogens. My whole theme for that month was to challenge the way that you are thinking about what you already know that you know, and maybe there might be something different that you should know, or maybe something you know should be looked at differently. And I gave you all sorts of guests to challenge that, and I've heard from so many Scaling Up Nation members that you are doing that very thing. Now, something that I thought was just amazing this year were how many postings that I saw from different Scaling Up Nation companies about Legionella Awareness Month. More than any other year, every single day in August, I saw somebody posting something about Legionella Awareness Month. And I think that is cool. Now, something that is really cool is the CDC is recognizing Legionella Awareness Month, and they actually put some posts out about it. So I just think that that is fantastic. Of course, this idea originally came from this very podcast right here. We started doing that back in 2020 when they canceled all the conferences. And folks, we still needed to know what was going on in these systems where people were not showing up for work. Of course, we were in the lockdowns and buildings were just allowed to fester this bacterial stew within their pipes. And we talked all about that during that very first year in 2020 of Legionella Awareness Month. And we brought the experts to you so you could listen to them wherever you were. And most of us did not have a stay-at-home order. We had an order saying that we were an essential business and we had to keep doing what we were doing so other people could continue doing what they were doing. So most of us were out in the field and we were servicing accounts in a ghost town. But we were listening to the podcast and we were trying new things and we were challenging the way that we were doing these things and thinking about what we were doing. That was the very first Legionella Awareness Month. Now we look at 2025 and nation, it is bigger, it is stronger than ever. And I want to thank the Scaling Up Nation for not only listening during the month of August, but for sharing these episodes. We try to do our best job of finding guests that can give us some great information about Legionella and other waterborne pathogens. And we just had an exceptional lineup this year, as we do every year. Well, Nation, we're going to have to do it again next year. So if you know of somebody that I need to get on this podcast for next Legionella Awareness Month in 2026, let me know who that is. We will get that scheduled. And Nation, always challenge yourself to keep learning. We will learn something and then somebody else will find something new out about that and it will change everything that we thought we knew about that particular item. And if we just simply rest on our laurels, we are not always doing the best and latest information and technologies and practices that we could be doing. So it's my challenge for you to always challenge what it is that you think that you know. And one of the ways that you can do that is by going to one of the conferences that we talk about on a regular basis. And of course, one of my favorite conferences is the Association of Water Technologies. And of course, that conference is taking place November 12th through 15th at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I'm going to be there. I sure hope to see you there. And Nation, I mentioned this last week, you're going to be sad that that conference is over. So right after that conference is over, the following week, November 20th, we are having the Hang. And of course, the Hang is your place to be, not only to continue the networking extravaganza that you started the week previously at the Association of Water Technologies, but also to meet new people. And Nation, the Hang is one of the most fun and easiest ways that you will meet people within this industry. It is 100% free, and all you have to do to attend is go to scalinguph2o.com/hang, register for the Hang, put the Hang on your calendar, and then show up at 6 p.m. November 20th. Of course, that's Eastern Time. And for exactly 1 hour, you will get off at 7 p.m., I promise, so you can schedule before and after that meeting. You are going to have fun, you are going to meet people, and you might meet somebody that can solve that problem that you just can't seem to solve. Or maybe you might meet somebody that will solve that problem that you haven't even had yet. Nation, I hope to see you at the Hang. And again, that's scalinguph2o.com/hang. Nation, another conference you might want to look into is taking place January 26th through 28th in San Diego, California, and that is the Clean Tech Forum North America. This is 3 days of high-quality meetings where you can meet people within the industry, innovators, investors, corporations, all around trends that are taking place today and innovation that drives our ecosystem forward. That is hosted by Clean Tech, and we're going to have all of that information on our events page. Nation, also taking place the week right after AWT is Desalitics Water Week. And of course, this is a 3-day virtual event dedicated to innovative water management solutions that promote a world of water abundance. And that is led by our friend, our Scaling Up Nation member, Waleed Curry, who just does a great job with all of the things that he does. And he's been on the podcast several times. Of course, we're going to have information for you to register. You don't have to go anywhere from this. This is an online event. And Waleed actually asked me to speak this year, so you'll even get to hear me. So all that information is going to be on our events page. And of course, while you're there, maybe look into next year and January 26th through 28th, maybe check out Clean Tech Forum North America taking place in San Diego, California. We'll, of course, have all of that information for you on our show notes page and so many more conferences on our show notes page. We try to make it as easy as possible for you to simply go to scalinguph2o.com/events, and everything is at your fingertips so you can plan where you are going to network and where you are going to challenge the information that you now know with the information that you're going to learn at that next event. Well, Nation, last week we had a lot of fun with our friends Danielle and Connor, and they told us about this tool called Culture Index. And Culture Index was a tool that they totally rewrote the fabric of their company, FactWater, and they told us all about it last week. Well, I know you've got lots of questions about Culture Index. Well, Nation, I've got a lot of answers for you. Here is the expert when it comes to Culture Index. Here's my interview with Randi Fargen. My lab partner today is Randi Fargen, Executive Advisor with Culture Index. Randi, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
It's so great to be here, Trace. Thanks for having me.
I am so happy you're here. We've been talking about doing this for a long time. We've tried to figure out when to schedule it, but you are finally here. And what a good week to be here because we just heard from Connor and Danielle about how they've been using Culture Index, and now we're going to learn even more about it.
Perfect timing.
Randi, would you mind telling the Scaling Up Nation a bit about yourself?
My name is Randi Fargen. I'm an executive advisor, and I basically help businesses grow by getting the right people, the right seats, making sure everybody has the tools to be successful, and really making sure we're giving the owners of the organization their time and their resources and their money back in order to do what they really do best, which is grow their businesses.
And I am a testament to such a good job that you do because you've been helping us out for a while. And it really is amazing when you start understanding the language behind Culture Index and how that can really make sure that you are putting the right people in the right seats. You are not just interviewing people, you're interviewing the right people. And now you're able to tailor make your questions. And I'm so excited to introduce the Scaling Up Nation about all the things we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely.
Now, how did you get involved in Culture Index?
So my journey actually started back in 2012. I am a recovering mechanical engineer, which I never understood why the engineering world wasn't a fit for me, why it was so hard for me, why it didn't fill my cup. So I was working for an organization as an engineering coordinator, and the owner of the organization was a member of Vistage. And they had brought in a speaker, Eileen Stevens, to talk about the program, understanding who's in the right seats in the organization, who do you have in the organization. And they were able to find out from my very quick, answers to this 2-question survey that not only was I in the wrong seat, but I was completely disengaged and I was actually looking for a new job. And so from that information, they were able to understand that I was wired very different than the rest of the engineers. And they got me on a trajectory to better fit my strengths, which was more management, leadership, team design, effectiveness, growth. And a couple years later, I became the president of the company. So, I love this program because I'm a product of it. And the fact that I went from being basically a C player, disengaged, looking for a new job, to the A player running the company is a testament to what understanding your team can do to their effectiveness within the organization, their happiness, their longevity. And so after running that company for a couple years using the program, I decided that this is just what I want to do every day because it's really a passion of mine and it really fits the strengths of who I am. So yeah, 2012 to 2025, it's been a great journey. I've been on the executive advisor side now for about a little over 3 years, and couldn't be happier.
I love your story because I think when most people hear that their company's doing an assessment, one, they think, okay, I don't want to do another assessment. But the quick response, probably right after that, is, okay, how is this going to be used against me?
Yes.
And your story is it wasn't used against you. I mean, they found you out and then they promoted you to run the company.
Yes, exactly. My philosophy is that fully exploited strengths are of far greater value than marginally improved weaknesses. So the program is intended to focus on what are the strengths of our team and how do we ensure we're maximizing those strengths. It's not that everybody shouldn't be aware of what their challenges and their weaknesses are, but we shouldn't waste our time, money, energy, and effort focusing there as our primary focus. It's let's exploit those strengths, let's get them fully maximized. And along the way, let's be aware of some of these challenges and let's put tools and processes and resources in place for them to help with that.
I'm going to share with the Scaling Up Nation what you already know. We recently hired a driver, and it was the first hire that we did with Culture Index. And I had found somebody before we did Culture Index, and I was trying to round peg, square hole at them. And you said, Trace, this person is not right for the job. And I'm like, but Randy, it's done. I can check the box. They said they want the job. And you said, you can do it, but you're going to be looking for this position again. So I took your advice, and I don't know if I shared this with you, but I called that gentleman and I asked him to kind of explain what he was looking for. And I told him what the day to day looked like. He was very social. And I said, you're going to talk to some people, but mostly you're going to be in the truck, you're going to be in the warehouse. And he honestly told me that sounds miserable.
Yes.
And I think he'd be a great salesperson, but we weren't hiring for that position. But I got some great feedback. He was very candid with me. We then hired based on the profiles, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, with that job. And I will say, as far as interviews go, that was our smoothest. We all felt good about the interview. We all felt like we were asking the right questions. We went into it knowing a little bit about the person from their survey. And then because of that, we had concerns. And then we wanted to strengthen some of the things we thought were some of their strengths. And we wanted to confirm that. So we just had the best interview I think we've ever had because we had this information.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we're able to do is give you some insights into who this person is at their core, who they're going to show up as day in and day out after your honeymoon period is over. And we want to make sure that not only are we setting you up for success as an organization, but this individual up for success as well. Because we see it time and time again of people take positions that aren't filling their cup. They're not passionate about it. And whenever you're doing something that you're not passionate about, even if you're good at it, you're still not going to stay engaged long term because it's just not something that you're excited to do. And so making sure we're finding people that are waking up every single morning overly excited to do what we're asking them to do, that's where you get that engagement level that increases. That's where you get their, the happier, healthier employee working better for you and staying longer with you. And that's really what the goal is. And so I'm so happy that you made the decision that you did.
You might have had some help in encouraging me go that way, but I'm glad you did. And exactly what you said is what Danielle and Connor described last week. So they've been living this for about 3 years. They had to make some tough decisions, but they were right decisions. And now people are staying longer. People are happier. People feel like they're contributing. They just belong. So I want the Scaling Up Nation to be aware of the tool that has got them there, that is getting us there. So let's start out with the Culture Index survey.
Okay.
So you got to do some sort of survey. We got to get some sort of information. And most people hear, oh my gosh, I've got to answer a questionnaire. This is going to be mind numbing. I don't want to spend 3 hours on this thing. So we've probably turned off 80% of the Scaling Up Nation that there is some sort, I'm going to say assessment. I know you don't like that term. We call it a survey, but people are thinking that they're going to be assessed. They're going to be graded somehow. It's going to be used against them. So tell us about the Culture Index survey.
Absolutely. So the survey is 2 questions and it takes on average 5 to 7 minutes to complete. So whenever we're asking individuals to do it, we give them a couple extra minutes and tell them it'll take them less than 10 minutes. Really, what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand, can we fully maximize your strengths in this role? If we can't, what tools, processes, and resources do we have to employ in order to help with that? Because just like your interview with the gentleman after the fact of that sounds miserable, I wouldn't be happy doing that. Unfortunately, they did a study, I think it was in 2024, it was through Indeed, that said 66% of employees said that they've accepted roles that they knew weren't a right fit for them. But people have requirements for financial stability. And so sometimes they have to take these roles that they know aren't filling their cup. They're not their passion. And then during that same study, they found out that of those 66% that took that role that they knew weren't a right fit, 50% of them left within 6 months. So, how much money are we spending on this cost of turnover because we're hiring people that are needing a job, not finding their passion? So that's really what we're trying to focus on, is making sure there's alignment there on the front end. And then, the bigger use of the program is, once you have them in your organization, how do you keep them there? How do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them retained?
You came in and you taught the Rising Tide Mastermind about Culture Index, and we all took the survey and we all learned about ourselves. And it's really made us communicate a lot better as mastermind teams. But then what the members have been able to do since then is really engage with their team members. It's really been cool, some of the stories that I've heard. That being said, you brought up the cost of turnover. And I remember you saying it's about 2.5 times whatever you're paying somebody. I actually think in our industry, it is much higher than that, because nobody comes into this industry fully knowing how to do the job. We've got to outfit them with equipment. We've got to get them some sort of vehicle. And then, of course, there's just all the training that I started to talk about in the beginning. So I don't know if that's 4 times. I don't know if that's 5 times. But if somebody leaves in 6 months, that is just horrible, because we've got this J curve in our business where if I'm doing, I don't know, X accounts and I'm servicing and I'm doing great, if I'm not training somebody, I've at least cut that in half and I'm paying double for half of the work. And then that person's getting trained. And eventually we get up to the point where they start becoming more self-efficient and then things are nice and happy. But if we never get there, we just wasted time, resources, money, all of that.
Absolutely. The onboarding process, which is a whole nother topic on efficiency of onboarding, depending on who you're onboarding. But, that process takes a lot of time, money, energy, and effort from everybody, from the hiring and the recruiting process to the training process, getting them up to speed. And that's a level of stress that we put on our teams, right? Because we're expecting them to help with the interviews, we're expecting them to help with the training. That creates inefficiencies within our organization. So if we're having to do that every 6 months because we're not understanding who we're bringing in, we're not aligning their strengths with the responsibilities of the role, it's just a cycle that's going to continue. And you're going to continue to overstress your team, which then decreases their engagement, decreases their morale. And so, getting the right people in, training them the way that they need to be trained makes everybody more effective, more efficient. You decrease that turnover, decrease the need for additional onboarding unless you're growing, which is a good thing. But yeah, really just trying to understand that from the beginning to make sure we're cutting out those mistakes that are so costly. not only to the profitability of the company, but to your morale as well.
And I want to underscore that you said it was 2 questions and it will take you no more than 7 minutes. And I think it might have took me 5 minutes to do.
Yeah, on average, it's 5 to 7. We do measure a trait that likes to make sure they're right. So they generally take a little bit longer. That's why we give them some extra time. But yeah, average 5 to 7 minutes. So it's not a big time investment on either side. On the applicant side, because one of the challenges with getting applicants to complete this is how many different organizations use different assessments, and they're 45 minutes, right? So if you're applying to 4 or 5 different jobs, you're wasting 45 minutes of your life each time by doing this. They talk about the applicant experience. That's where you get a decrease in that applicant experience. So the fact that you can tell them this will take you less than 10 minutes, much more willing to participate in that. And then from an internal standpoint, the first time you have your team take it, it's a 10-minute process or less than 10 minutes. But the ongoing, use of the tool where we're doing a health check on the team, that's 3 to 5 minutes. Every 3 to 6 months, you're investing 3 to 5 minutes of your team's time. So the time investment is something that we really focused on, trying to make sure it was effective and efficient, but there wasn't a huge time commitment because in all reality, everybody's busy. We don't have time for 45 minutes every quarter.
So, Nation, it's my hope that you heard this and you're thinking, hey, this is not a big deal. This isn't the 45-minute survey or assessment that I had to take before. It's 5 to 7 minutes, very easy to answer. You're basically selecting what adjectives about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a list of adjectives that, we're asking you, please select the ones that you feel represent you, describe you. And then the second question is, please select the ones that you feel represent you being successful in your role.
And then we actually have on our Indeed posting that that's the first step of the process. If they're interested, they then take the Culture Index survey. And then we see if it matches one of the patterns that we'll talk about later. And then we begin our interview process. And it's gone so much smoother. But I did want to ask, because I know people are wondering about this, are there any legal implications that I'm surveying somebody in order to get them employed?
So it's a data point, and as long as you use it for all of your hiring, you can't pick and choose, right? Because then people can say you're discriminating. You only did it for this role, not this role. So if you're going to employ this on the hiring side, which is only about 10% of the value of the program, you have to do it for everybody. You have to do it for all of your applicants. But it meets all of the EEOC guidelines for anything required for, a hiring tool, a hiring program. We fall within all of those guidelines. And it's actually objective data, right? We don't collect anything during the survey process that could be used for discriminatory purposes. So you're taking everything out with the exception of the dots, is what we call them, and that's an objective data point that you're using. So we don't know their race, we don't know their religion, and we don't know their gender. We don't know anything about them outside of, are they naturally wired to be successful doing what we're asking them to do? And then you still have to look at their skills. You still have to look at their experiences. Those are all things outside of the realm of what we measure. So this is one data point that you're using in order to understand, can I set this person up for success within the organization? There's still a lot more. The resume, the reference checks, the interview, those are all still pieces that you're using to determine whether you're going to hire these individuals or not. So this is considered a data point, and yes, it does meet all the EEOC guidelines.
Well, with that, hopefully that calmed down a lot of questions because I know whenever somebody hears we're adding something to the hiring process, that always comes up. So thank you for that answer. I took the survey and I told you this. I was like, was that a waste of time? How is that possibly going to be useful for anybody? And that's how I felt when I took the survey. It didn't take me very long. I clicked on some things that I thought described me. Then you called me and you had like tarot cards and you could tell me everything about my life, what frustrated me, where I got joy. And it was like, oh my gosh, Randi, have you been following me around for the bulk of my life? How do you know these things? It was amazing what you were able to tell me based on that survey.
Absolutely. We put a lot of time, money, energy, and effort to really make sure that the validity and the reliability of the survey are top notch, as good as you can get. And that's the most common response that I get is, who have you talked to? Most people are like, did you talk to my wife? Did you talk to my husband? How do you know this? And it's because, there's statistical backing and it's real data, right? It's psychometrics, which is basically psychology and a mathematician came together and created the psychometrics field. And so there is a lot of scientific backing to this, to where we are able to get very accurate information just by selecting those words, which is what is bizarre to people. But yeah, it's tarot cards, it's black magic, it's crystal ball. I get all of that. Absolutely.
What's the history behind Culture Index? How is it developed? You said there was a lot of science. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our owner founder, he was in the restaurant business. They were using different assessments, different tools, but finding that there was room for improvement as far as the validity, the accuracy. Like, people weren't resonating with a lot of the data. They were making hiring decisions and then not coming to fruition because it was just not as accurate as he would have liked it. And so he decided that it was going to be his mission to create some sort of program that the data was a lot more accurate, a lot more useful, and intended for growth of organizations. Basically, right people, right seats to hit your strategic goals. Where are your gaps? Where are your opportunities? How do we get those people in those places? So he partnered with a psychometrician, Dr. Janda, and they worked for about 6 years on the word list and the questions, in order to go through the full process of the validation and the reliability process. So it took about $2 million in 6 years worth of work to get the word list where it is, to get the validity, the reliability up where it's at. They launched in 2005 was the launch. So we're actually celebrating our 20 years right now. And yeah, every different tool, every different assessment, every different survey has to be validated through the EEOC. And we're very proud to be able to say that we have the highest validity and reliability on the market. Nothing's perfect, but at least if you're using data, you know that you're using accurate data with us.
Well, after I took the survey, you and I had a call, and you told me all these things that were so true about me. And I looked at the graph, and it was a squiggly line with different colors on it. There were dots, there was a red line. I had no idea at that time what I was looking at. You called me an enterpriser. I had no idea what that was. You said, oh, you are +5 to the right as far as your autonomy. So that means all of these things. I mean, it truly was amazing what you were able to tell about me from the survey, but it wasn't just me. It was every single member of our team. You met with our leadership team, and everybody had the same experience that I had. And then as you met with the Rising Tide Mastermind, we had 76 members that all had the same experience. It's kind of scary accurate.
Yeah. And again, that's the most common feedback is like, how did you know this? How did you do this? And it's uncanny. Like, that's where at my previous organization, we were a bunch of engineers. Engineers are very skeptical. Engineers like data to back up this information. And the fact that they saw the data, they were able to back it up is the reason that they chose to go with it, because it is statistically backed and it is accurate. And, again, talking about how do we employ your strengths, not the other side of the equation. It's really a cool tool that everybody in the organization, from owners to frontline workers, can find value from.
All right, Randy, we'll say somebody has taken the survey. They've got their culture index report in front of them. What does it look like? What does it measure?
Yeah. So we measure four dominant traits. Applied behavioral analytics has been around since the 50s. Everybody's measuring the four dominant traits. So ours are autonomy, social ability, pace and patience, and then conformity are the four primary traits. And that's what we create a pattern out of. So those are the four primary drivers of your personality. And then we measure three sub traits called logic, ingenuity, and mental stamina. So we're kind of able to give you the four primary traits. Think of that as the car, and then the sub traits, think of that as like the amenities within the car. And so we're able to give you a pretty granular, detailed view of people's personality, from how are they going to act, how are they going to solve problems, how are they going to communicate, how much social needs do they have within their role, there's a lot of different information that we're able to glean from those 7 traits.
So once you have that report, you meet with somebody like yourself, you kind of learn how to interpret it. And with that, what's the next step? Do I now start treating people different? Do I start acting differently? What's the next step with Culture Index?
Great question. Well, you have to remember that 99.9% of the population wakes up in the morning trying to do a good job. They don't wake up saying, I'm so excited to screw up people's day today. But whenever they get to work, they feel like 99% of the people are screwing up their day. And it's just because everybody sees life through a different prism. Everybody has a different view. A great example of this, and I know we use this during the time with your leadership team, is the word orange. Whenever I say that, some people interpret that as the fruit. Some people interpret that as the color. Here in Denver, they interpret it as the Broncos. And so everybody interprets words differently based on the prism that they see life through. And so the goal is to help everyone understand, how are people interpreting these things? The goal is to create a common language. So now we've taken out that barrier of those misses, right? Now, whenever somebody says orange, we have language that we can use to really figure out, what are we talking about? So whenever you engage, it's, using this is the primary use of the tool is an in-house management program. So everybody can understand, how does my team need to be managed, motivated, and communicated with, and what tools do they need to be successful within their roles? Because the one size management fits all style doesn't work. We had spoken earlier about employing the platinum role. Treat everybody the way that they need to be treated. We naturally manage people the way that we want to be managed, which in people like your case, you don't need to be managed. And so whenever we have to employ different techniques and different styles to make people successful, this is just a way to pinpoint and target those different techniques and those different communication styles to increase your chances of success, increase that effectiveness. So really using it to understand, how do they need to be communicated with? How much detail do they need versus how do I communicate? How much detail do I communicate in? So it's really your responsibility as the leader of the organizations to be able to understand your team and meet them where they're at.
It's been a tremendous tool for that. Now you did it again, so I'm going to call you out on it. When you mentioned when you were referring to my high A, you laughed. Why are you laughing at my high A?
So the way that we measure the traits, I can actually give you what percent of the population has more or less of the traits, because we measure the traits. It's a normative distribution on a bell curve. So from a bell curve perspective, statistically speaking, 98% of the population has less autonomy than you do. So you're in a very unique class of 2% of the population that has that much drive, that much focus, that much innovation, that much vision, to where you just see things that nobody else can because of how high your autonomy trait is. So that's why I giggle at it. Is it just, extreme traits are extreme. They're called extreme for a reason, but it's just that high of an autonomy trait. It really makes me giggle, because it makes sense of why you're doing 900 different things, and you have this going and that going and that going, and you're thinking about what's next. So that's why I giggle. It's just, you have a very extreme trait that not a lot of the population has.
Well, I will tell you, when you were reviewing my survey and you told me about that, and you told me all the things that have come along with that throughout my life that I've experienced, I was like, oh my gosh, this person gets me.
Yeah, and that's it. It's just, the ability to break down the statistics of the traits, so you understand, even if somebody else has high autonomy, why is your high autonomy trait so much different than their high autonomy trait? Because not only do we measure the presence of the trait or not, but we also measure the strength of the trait. So the stronger the trait, the harder it is for you to modify. So whenever you're having to pull back that autonomy trait and slow it down, that's where you really start to get frustrated, because that's not natural for you. Naturally, you're going a million miles an hour with your hair on fire. So for you to slow down and wait, that's going to create those frustrations. And so to be able to tell you the percentage of the population that acts different than you, even if they're still on the same side of the arrow as you are, that's where it really becomes valuable.
And that's the second graph that's there. The first graph you get is who you are, how you behave naturally. The second graph is how you have to behave at work. And that was, again, one of the first things you said. You said, you feel things aren't going fast enough. You feel you're having to put the brakes on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did you know this? But now knowing this information, I now know people aren't trying to slow me down. And I also know I'm probably moving too fast and I'm not getting all the information. And now having a language around that, knowing how other people respond to me and how to better interact with people, we have such a better team. We have better communication, and the outcomes that we're going for, they may take a little longer than I want, but they get so much better than I could have ever achieved by myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you guys do have that common language now. And now you understand whenever people are not moving forward, it's not because they're trying to be defiant. It's not because they're trying to go against what you're trying to do. It's maybe they don't have enough information. Maybe there's not a clear process. And being able to understand how much information, what type of processes these people require in order to be successful is so important, because then all of a sudden things are moving a lot faster than they were before. I hate to break it to you, nothing will ever move fast enough for you. But,
Story of my
you,
life.
yes, exactly. But you will be progressing through these projects and attaining these goals a lot faster, because now you have an understanding of where those disconnects are and how do you need to fill those disconnects. And that's the power of being able to do that in order to really improve your effectiveness of your team and hit those goals. And again, not at the pace you want them to be done, but it is going faster than it would be otherwise.
Now, here's the really funny thing about this, because I'm so far over to the right on my A. One of the top people on my team, Chris, we love Chris, he is the exact space on the other side with his D. Can you tell us about the A and D? And you can talk about Chris and I if you like.
Absolutely. So, we call the autonomy trait the gas in the organization. So, moving this organization forward, which you are pedal to the metal as fast as we can go, where our conformity trait, we call that the brake. So, he's the one putting the brakes on, making sure that we're not driving this car off the road into the ditch and hitting a tree. So, very, very complementary from a standpoint of we have gas and brake, but that's where that dynamic friction is going to come in, right? That's where that dynamic tension is going to come in, because his mindset is we need to make sure it's right. Your mindset is let's just go forward and figure it out. And so having that balance is actually where the magic comes in, right? To be able to say, now I understand why Chris puts the brakes on everything, because he's actually our quality control on that back end, right? And so having that balance and having that dynamic is where you find your growth and it's where you find your success. But it's also where you find a lot of your misses. And so understanding that, I mean, you can speak to this now that you know this about Chris. How much easier is it to come in every day and understand this is the information he's going to need? He's not being defiant. He's not pushing back because of X, Y, or Z. It's just we need to get this information to him.
Well, I will say I've learned that about Chris, not to the extent that I know with Culture Index, but through temperaments and some other things that we've done. I've always understood that about Chris, but I didn't understand how opposite he was to me. And I didn't necessarily understand that the information that I needed wasn't the information that he needed. And Culture Index gave us that common framework. So now he's able to come better prepared to talk to me and make sure I can get what I need. And I'm doing the same with him. And that has just been amazing on our team.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not only between you and Chris or, bosses and direct reports, it's within the whole team as well, because now Chris is more effective with the rest of your team as well. You're more effective with the rest of the team. So it really, it starts at the top, making sure that, the top of the house is solid, but it really benefits in that exact scenario of understanding people better, understanding how to communicate with them, understanding their needs. That trickles down through your entire organization to where next thing you know, everybody's more effective. So whenever we call this the management tool, it absolutely is an in-house management tool to help set your teams up for success, but it goes so much deeper than that into, our teams are working more effectively now together because now they understand each other a lot better. And, whenever you understand somebody better, you automatically have a little bit of grace for them, right? And there's a little bit more understanding of, again, you're not here to ruin my day. I'm not here to ruin yours. It's just, I see apples, you see oranges. How do we get together? And so it's really an amazing tool to be able to use throughout the entire organization, not just at the management level.
Before we dive deeper into our interview, we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Scaling Up Nation, are you ready to take your water treatment business to the next level? Scranton Associates is your key to growth. As a fourth-generation business, they bring innovation and expertise to every blend. Their commitment to quality and precision ensures that your products will meet the highest standards in the industry. With Scranton Associates, you're not just getting a supplier, you're gaining a partner invested in your success. From custom liquid blends to specialized powder formulations, they have the capabilities to meet all of your water treatment needs. Don't miss the opportunity to work with a company that's been creating solutions for over a century. Visit scalinguph2o.com/Scranton and see why professionals choose Scranton Associates for their blending needs. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/Scranton. Scranton Associates. We don't just blend, we create solutions. Be sure to stop by booth 500 to see Jill and the rest of the team at Scranton Associates at the AWT Annual Convention. Let's jump back in right where we left off. Randy, in the beginning of the episode, I mentioned there are different patterns, and I mentioned mine is an enterpriser. How many patterns are they? How are they similar? What do they even mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've done is we've grouped like dots, like traits into patterns, and then like patterns into categories in order to make the data more usable. So we have 4 different categories. So one of them, visionary categories, those are the people that we call the gas in the organization: vision, strategy, growth, and change. We have a social category, which is where your people are, right? They're engaging, they're persuasive, they're enthusiastic, they're influential. They should be in front of the people, whether it's internal, whether it's external. That's just their superpower. And then we have 2 categories, research and organizational, that we call the break within the organization. They focus on quality, they focus on doing it right, they focus on process, basically focus on making sure that we're not running off the road into the ditch and hitting the tree. So we break it in, and that's really how we talk about it: is where do you put your gas? Where do you put your brake? And where do you put your glue within the organization? And in order to make sure that you have good balance, we often see organizations that have a lot of growth from a top line perspective, but bottom line is not keeping up where it should. Those types of organizations, we see they have too much gas. People are very innovative. People are very forward thinking, but we're not focusing on actually the execution piece. Other organizations that they've stalled out on their growth, we see that they have a lot of brake. Everybody's really working excellent within the organization from an output standpoint, but our top line generation isn't there. So we need to get a little bit more gas. And then really the glue is the culture and the morale builders, right? The social ability trait is where they focus on the relationships, they focus on people. So they make retention, right? Client retention, they make employee retention. And so that's really how we focus: is where do you put these people within your organization to maximize their value to you, maximize your value to them, and really create a balanced team. And balance doesn't mean equal parts of each. Every organization is different. There is no secret sauce. There is no magic to this is exactly what you need. It's where are you at your growth cycle? What team do you have in place already? And so we really take all of that into account whenever we're looking at where the patterns would be most successful. What patterns do we need to put into the organization to help you hit your goals?
You called this a management tool, and we talked about how it could be used and it should be used for hiring. I don't want to call it management. I want to call it coaching, because we have all these people on our team, and we might be their direct report, and our job is to make this the best place they can ever work, to make them look forward to coming to work, to make them want to make the company better, to make each one of the team members better. And I can tell you that since we've been using this, it has created a framework so we could do that to the best of our ability. So I want the Scaling Up Nation to understand the other side of this, and there's multiple sides of it, but how do we use this to better our relationships with our team members, make our team members thrive in what they're doing in their day-to-day?
Absolutely. So, most organizations, the most expensive line on the P&L is their human capital. And your human capital should be treated as an asset. So, think of a house. Whenever you buy a house, you don't just sit there and do nothing with it, right? You maintain it, you improve it. So the question becomes, how are you maintaining and improving your asset, which is your human capital? So that's where we are able to use the tool in order to understand where are the disconnects for our team on a spot by spot basis. As far as, we don't just do this once, it's not just a one and done. This is who you are, this is how you're acting at work, and we get a nice fluffy report and we put it in the drawer and we never use it again. And so this is really a tool to integrate into your culture. That's why it's called what it is, like, in order to understand over time, how is the team doing. And so that bottom graph that you had spoken about, the job behaviors graph, we resurvey the team every 3 to 6 months to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on. Think of it as a health check. That is dynamic data that will constantly change based on the situation that our team's in. And it will give you insights into specific disconnects that are going on with the team at that time. So now, as managers and as leaders and as coaches, you have the ability to specifically see where the disconnect is, instead of something's not working, we don't know what it is, we don't have a way to do a root cause analysis on exactly what's going on. So we're just going to try some things. And so this data is able to provide you with actionable items, because now you have specifics on where the disconnect is. What questions do I need to ask to get to the bottom of this? And then the biggest thing is, then now what do I do to affect change and create a bridge where that disconnect is, or where that gap is? And so it is an ongoing tool that we use. It's not a one and done. Whenever I was with my former company, I used it for the 8 years that I was there, and they are still using it to this day. And so that's where it really is a health check. It's a program to understand how your team's doing on a constant basis, because things are constantly changing. You're adding new people, you're adding new products, you're getting new team members. Any of that sort of stuff is going to change how your team has to work. So we want to understand, what are those changes doing to the team from a disconnect standpoint, from a misalignment standpoint, and making sure that we're getting ahead of them before something bad happens. So think of it as a proactive tool to be able to get ahead of problems and be able to see things that sometimes employees either don't know how to articulate to you, or they don't want to just come out and tell you.
We subscribe to the entrepreneur operating system at our company. So our reviews for the last, 8 years looked like, is the person performing on core values? Is the person performing on the 5 bullet points we said that their job is? And then we tried to, are you doing at least one push personally and one push professionally to do some sort of stretch goal? And those were our quarterly reviews, and they were okay. But now that we've added this as a tool, they are way more productive. They're enjoyable. People feel like they look forward to them now. It is tremendous. So, I just really can't say enough about this tool. But in saying all the good things, are there any pitfalls we need to look out for?
Yeah, absolutely. With anything like this, it's really easy to start to weaponize it, right? Start to use my dots as a weapon, use the tool as a weapon. And that is something that I do not tolerate within my client base. Is the second this is weaponized, the program is dead within your organization. We all have strengths, but with all of those strengths come some challenges that all of our patterns will present. And so, whenever we're talking about not weaponizing it, we can't just say, get over it, that's my trait. Absolutely not. That is not a way to, create that camaraderie and create that effectiveness within the team. And so, blaming your traits, using your traits as the weapon, using this as a weapon, pointing it at somebody and saying, you're not the right fit because this said so. We measure 7 work related traits. We don't measure everything. There's a lot more to somebody than 7 traits. We don't measure skills. We don't measure experience. And so using this again to set people up for success and never never telling people they can't do something because of the wiring. It's no, we're not going to be able to set you up for success in this manner, but this is what we can do to help. And that's where the program really should be used, is how do we use this to help people, not tear people down, not weaponize it.
Now, you are extremely good at what you do, and I really appreciate all the advice and coaching that you've given myself and my team and the mastermind now. That being said, you are very familiar with the industrial water treatment industry. You have multiple water treatment clients. So you just have a really good perspective of what it is that we do and how to deploy the culture index with that knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the fact that you guys are very, very niche, very, very specific. The skill sets you guys are looking for are very specific. And in order to understand, how do we maximize the effectiveness of the people that we have within there? How do we understand what are some of the responsibilities that are energizing this person versus the responsibilities that are draining this person? And how do we as organizations kind of maybe redistribute some of those in order to keep the team? Because you guys, again, you guys are very specific, you're very niche. It takes a long time to get your team ramped up. I know I'm dealing with that with, Connor and Danielle, of how do we find this very specific skill set, which we don't measure, but how do we also invest in them from a long-term growth perspective? And so being able to use this in order to understand that a lot better and understand how do we keep the people that we have? How do we maximize them? Knowing how much it takes to onboard people within your guys' industry is really, really important, because it's time in the seat and the skills and the experience that people gain with your guys' industry. It's invaluable. So how do we keep that longer?
Now, you are going to be the keynote speaker at the Association of Water Technologies Business Owners Meeting taking place November 11th. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Through different clients within the industry that happened to be on the board there, they had contacted me, presented this opportunity. And it's really exciting because what we're going to be able to do is let everybody in attendance take the survey and then have everybody be able to go through, a presentation where we learn how to interpret that and really focus on where does this provide value to the organization from a bigger picture perspective of, how do we use this to grow people? How do we use this to grow your business? How do we use this to grow your profits? So I'm really excited about it.
I'm excited about it as well. I will be there. I know a lot of the mastermind members will be there. So you'll have a lot of friends cheering you on.
I love it.
Randi, this has been great. And I think a lot of people are thinking that this is probably something that they need to do. But is it just them that need to do it? Does the entire organization need to deploy it? What's your recommendation?
Absolutely. So we always take the top down approach, right? Because culture starts at the top. I don't care what you have on your wall. I don't care what you have in your mission statement. It's, are you living it? You have to be able to talk the talk and walk the walk. And so we always start at the top with it. But this program is literally for the entire organization, from president, CEO, again, down to the frontline workers. In my previous role, we integrated it into the entire team to where we had laminated cards with their patterns on them, and they would bring them to meetings with us. And so everybody had their card with their pattern, and everybody spoke the same language. They knew what autonomy meant, they knew what conformity meant. They understood the communication style depending on the traits. And so we became so much more effective as a team, not just as managers, but as peers, to be able to do this. We also had it to where our internal email signatures had our pattern on them. So people knew how to respond to us. And so that's the level that we took it to, and not an immediate, right? This is something that we gradually built into. You have firsthand knowledge of how much there is to this program, and it takes time to get it fully implemented and fully running within the organization. So this isn't something, it's not a magic wand, it's not a magic bullet that you come in and bam, everything's fixed. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So as we grew with the program, it grew deeper in the organization to where it was our language, to where everybody knew each other's culture indexes, everybody knew each other's surveys and knew how to communicate with them. And so that's really the power of it. That's really where you'll see the ROI, is integrating it through your entire team, because we can become more effective as leaders with our individual direct reports, but it's how do we get them more effective with each other is really where you're going to see the value of the program come through. So the in-depth knowledge as far as the education transfer, that's where the managers get to learn the program a lot more. But there is a learning process that goes on with the entire organization to make everybody talk this language.
There are two types of listeners that listen to this podcast. Some own their own company and others work for a company. So for each one of those groups, they're hearing this, they're thinking, hey, this sounds pretty good. How would each one of those groups get started?
Absolutely. So to get started, reach out to me and we will have what we call a free team diagnostic done on the team where we survey the leadership team and, 20 people within the organization. We want to understand, survey some of our top performers, survey some of the people that might be struggling with their responsibilities. And I sit down with the owner, the CEO, whoever that is, and we go through what the data is telling us in order to give insights into who do you have on your team, where are some of those disconnects. So the goal of this is really to have them test drive the program on me and then also have actionable takeaways from it that they can go and implement regardless of ever moving forward. They have insights into their team that can help them be better leaders, be better managers, help them fill those disconnects to increase the effectiveness of the team right off the bat. So that would be step one is let's get you some data so you can see who's on your team. Let's get you that data so you can really see what's going on. And I'm not going to tell anybody anything about themselves that they don't already know. What the data is doing is confirming our observations, confirming our actions. It's just a data point to be able to put information to things that you might not be able to explain, things that you might not be able to put your finger on directly. This gives you data to put it into a format that all of a sudden we have language around all of that.
Now, if somebody has a key position in the company and they're hearing this and they want to go to their CEO or somebody that will make this decision, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, well, being able to have some objective information to understand who do we need in this role? A job description is one thing, but understanding what are the strengths of the person that we need to be successful here, that's huge. And so anything objective data wise that you can get to help you make better decisions is important. The biggest challenge with the hiring process, especially the traditional hiring process, is it's all subjective information. People's resumes are subjective because they can put whatever they want on that.
And now AI is writing the resumes for
And
them.
now AI is writing them, exactly. And, they did a study, I think back in 2018, that said 71% of resumes had embellishments on them. That number is probably a million times higher now, given that AI is in play. And then, the references, unless you are controlling who the references are during the interview process and requesting those, they're not going to give you somebody to talk to that didn't think that they were a good performer, right? They're not going to say, you should call my old boss. We didn't get along at all. They're going to give you people that are going to give them glowing reviews. So you have a resume that is basically a balance sheet with zero liabilities. You have references that are in their corner as well, helping to champion them. And then you have the interview process where they've proven that the interview process is the number one place people modify their behaviors because they show up as who they think you need, right? And I'm sure many of your listeners have been in a situation where they've hired somebody and 3 months later you're asking the question, who are you and where's the person that I interviewed? And so being able to have any sort of objective information, objective data behind it to help flush out some of that stuff, because you can't blame people for modifying themselves coming into an interview. They're trying to get a job. Of course they are. And so really anybody that's trying to hire, I highly recommend everybody's in alignment with what those responsibilities of the role are. That's one of the biggest disconnects that I deal with my clients is people have different expectations from different perspectives of the role. So alignment on responsibilities of the role, understanding from a data perspective who you need there, and then having data on who the candidate is. Because who I showed up as in an interview to get to, my previous job was very, very different than who I showed up as a day in, day out worker. And there was a huge disconnect. I was one of that 66% that took a job that I knew I wasn't going to be fulfilled in. And so really objective data is the biggest thing during the hiring process, and alignment within the company of making sure everybody's in alignment with what the responsibilities of the role are.
Randy, I have no doubt that we have intrigued the entire Scaling Up Nation with Culture Index. And we're going to make sure that they have your contact information on the show notes page. So, Nation, if you want to reach out to Randy, we'll make that as easy as possible for you. But I will also tell you that we probably created a lot more questions than we've actually answered during this interview.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much depth to this program. There's so much more. I mean, you spent 2 days with me, and I could only give you 30% of the information that you need. We build the rest of that as we go. So that's why I'm here to offer that free team diagnostic to all companies listening, to be able to experience the data. If you can experience it, it does connect a lot of the dots, and it answers a lot of the questions just from being able to experience it. That's the best way to get those questions answered, is to do that free team diagnostic or reach out to me. I'm more than happy to have conversations and fill in those gaps for people, because there's no way that we would ever be able to give people enough information to say, yeah, this is not voodoo, this is not black magic, this is the perfect solution. So I'm here to support and answer those questions.
Well, thank you for sharing all that information and offering to help members of the Scaling Up Nation. I want to ask you so many more questions about Culture Index, but I know we only have so much time. We're going to go ahead and transition to the lightning round if you're ready.
Oh boy, yes.
All right. Lightning round question number one. If you can go back in time and talk to your former self on your very first day as an executive advisor, what advice would you give yourself?
I would tell myself to give myself some grace. I'm very similar in my impatience and wanting things to happen right now side of the personality. And I like to control everything. So giving myself some grace as far as it takes time to build. It takes time to build a business from the ground up. So I would definitely tell myself to calm down and give myself some grace.
What are the last few books that you've read?
Oh, I am currently reading How Not to Age. It's a nutritionist that's talking about, slowing the aging process and slowing down the process of disease by eating healthier foods and providing your body the nutrition that it needs in order to live longer. I have a goal to live to 100. So I'm really trying to make sure that I'm doing everything I can in my power. Vitamin B12 is a big thing I've learned.
All right. Any other books you can think of?
I have my list of books back here. Extreme Ownership was one that I had recently reread. My traits don't lend themselves to remembering everything the first time, so I have to reread some books. So I just finished up Extreme Ownership for the second time.
That's a great book. We read that in the
Yes,
mastermind.
absolutely.
When they make a movie about your life, who do you want playing Randy?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, she doesn't look like me, but I love Sandra Bullock.
Oh,
That kind of ages
yeah,
me right
she'd be
there.
lucky to get
So
that role.
I would love. I think she's feisty and snazzy, and I just really appreciate her. So yeah, Sandra Bullock.
So my brush with greatness, we had an AWT board meeting in Jackson Hole, and we went to the grocery store, and Sandra Bullock was standing in line in front of us.
No way.
So didn't say
I
a
would
word to her,
love.
but she was standing in line in front of us.
Yeah, she's always been one of my favorites.
Final question. You now have the ability to talk to anybody throughout history. Who'd it be with and why?
Fantastic question. Um,
We pride ourselves on our lightning round questions.
I love that. I think I'd want to talk to Madame Curie and figure out like what was going through her mind, like whenever she started not feeling well, like the like what was happening there. I just think it's fascinating she did what she did. So I really want to understand her culture index and understand the why behind it.
Wouldn't it be great if you could get in the DeLorean, go back in time, and start getting culture
Yes.
index of all these public figures,
Right,
historic
absolutely,
figures?
yes, I think that would be fascinating.
Have you seen the Netflix movie about Madame Curie?
I actually haven't. That's on my
It's
list.
actually pretty well done.
Is it? That's awesome.
Randy, I want to thank you for sharing so much about Culture Index. I want to thank you for helping my team, for helping the mastermind, and helping the entire Scaling Up Nation just maybe understand each other a little bit better and giving us some better communication tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the more you can learn about other people, the more grace you have for them, the more effective you can be with them. And so that's all what I'm all about, is the more you can learn, the better you're going to be.
Nation, I know you can tell how excited I was during this interview. This has been a tool that has really bridged a gap that we have had in our company for so long. Now, we have some amazing people working within our company, but let's face it, there was a lot of luck that was involved for them finding their way here and making sure that everybody lined up with the right job, that they were in the right seat, and we found the right people. Well, Culture Index was that missing piece that helped us take all of the different applicants that would apply for a job and really make sure that they were the right fit for the right job. And then from there, we were able to better tailor questions for that specific candidate, knowing what we know about Culture Index. And then with the quarterly reviews that we do to make sure that everybody is rowing in the same direction, that if anybody has any questions about everything, that we can answer those. Culture Index allows us to conduct those at a higher level because, again, we are coaching in a better way, the way that person needs to be coached. I can't say enough good things about Culture Index. And Nation, if you are going to the Association of Water Technologies Convention and Expo, and you are a business owner, make sure that you arrive the day before. Actually, you probably want to arrive the day before that, because the day before the convention starts is the business owners meeting. And Randi is going to be the keynote speaker, and she's going to be talking even more about Culture Index. Nation, I can't say enough good things about Culture Index. I loved it so much. Not only did I bring it into our company here, but also we brought it into the mastermind, and Randi helped the entire Rising Tide mastermind. We're about 76 members strong, where she met with all the individuals of the mastermind that made time with her to talk about how they can do a better job with their teams. And Nation, we've just had an overwhelming response within the Rising Tide Mastermind, how this tool really allows you to work better with your team, within your team, the entire team. So, Nation, we will have Randi's contact information on our show notes page. And of course, if you're going to be at AWT, get there a day early. You can see her speak and you can actually talk with her in person. Again, we'll have all of her contact information on our show notes page. And Nation, it is just unbelievable how 5 minutes and 2 questions makes everything that you do with your team so much better. You know, somebody that I think is making our week better each and every week is our friend James McDonald. And of course, he does that with a brand new installment of What Do You Know?
Hello and welcome to What Do You Know? The game show where we find out what do you know about industrial water treatment, drop by drop. So pump up your brain, take out that test kit of knowledge, and prepare to answer this week's question on What Do You Know? Today's question is, what is the molar mass of water? It is 18 grams per mole. If you want to be more precise, it is 18.01528 grams per mole. The phrases molar mass and molecular weight are often used interchangeably, even if not technically the exact same. I'm James McDonald, and thanks for playing along with us. Stay tuned for next week's episode of What Do You Know?
Well, thank you, James. And thank you, Scaling Up Nation. I love that I have a platform that I can bring you new tools that allow you to do what you do even better. And I love it when you let me know that you're using these tools. I know Culture Index is going to be one of these tools that you are absolutely going to fall in love with because you are going to be able to do so much with it. But especially, I want to thank you for allowing me to bring new things to you and challenge some of the ways that you think about things or some of the ways that you do things. So not only are you getting bigger and better every time we have this podcast, but you are raising the bar in the industrial water treatment industry. And nation, that is the whole focus of this podcast, that we want to raise the bar of the industrial water treatment industry. We do that one episode at a time. We do that one Scaling Up Nation member at a time. And of course, that is you and all of us put together. We're over 20,000 strong now. Imagine that heavy bar that we can lift with ease, put it as high as we can over our heads, and we are raising the bar each and every week, each and every day, each and every customer. Nation, thank you for that. That is the whole point of this podcast. And of course, we're going to have a brand new episode for you next week. And you all know I love to celebrate Halloween, and next week is our Halloween episode. See you next week, folks. Are you ready to take your water treatment career to the next level? Get the confidence you need to sign up for the Certified Water Technologist exam today by taking our Certified Water Technologist prep course. Learn valuable tools and techniques to help you succeed. Plus, test your knowledge with our 100-question practice exam. Visit scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep and put yourself on the fast track to certification. Don't wait, start today.